Something that I think about all the time is memories, and I'm like fascinated by this idea of memories. I want to dive deep into it, but I think a really cool place to start. You had a realization lately, or recently, around the idea of memories. I think would be a really cool jumping off point.
Oh, yes. I wonder. Okay, I'll give a little bit of context. The memory thing is fascinating to me as well because we have taped episodes about time
Mhm.
and that the only time that exists is the now, the present moment. And it's taken me a long time to wrap my head around there isn't a past and there isn't a future.
Mhm.
We recreate the past from memories and thoughts, beliefs that truly come from memories, and then we create a future typically based on those events that happen where we're projecting them into a future, although you can visualize and express or want or intend
Mhm.
to cultivate a future, but it doesn't exist. When you talk about the future, where is it? When you talk about the past, where is it? And it's so fascinating. Like it's like, oh, but I have this memory of this person and this interaction, this concert that I went
Mhm.
to, this visceral feeling or the taste of this dessert that was amazing. And it's like, but where is it? So it's a construct in our mind that is a memory. And I want to make sure that people know, like, I'm not an expert on memories. Like, I'm sure
Yeah.
scientists, physicists, quantum physicists, everybody can probably talk about it much more better and scientifically and proven things. This is just from garnered experience and wisdom that has integrated and things that
Yeah.
come to mind.
Like, like just simply like, what do we know to tangibly be true? Is it like I've never been to the past and I've never been to the future? I have ideas about what that was.
Yeah, or there's a part of your consciousness that was
Mhm.
there because
Yeah.
we've done also past life regressions where you're zipped into a past life, but we use the terminology past life. Is it actually a past life or is it something that's occurring right here,
Yeah.
right now? It just looks really different. So we think it's in the past because the dress was different or you're being
Mhm.
chased
Yeah.
by dinosaurs that we were told were, from a million years ago.
Yeah. If we can access it now, then it's now because I can't travel in time. And like you've literally seen me, my physical body in front of you in whatever time and place this is, where my consciousness was in a completely different life. So it can't exactly be the past. So what is it? And a lot of interesting question.
And memories are such a beautiful teacher. I have sat in contemplation and meditation where memories will pop into my mind, and some are viscerally horrible. And like they bring me to a feeling of regret and shame and embarrassment, pure grief and sadness. But on the flip side, they can also be like hilarious and so much fun. And oh my gosh, remember that time, and it's so great. But pretty recently, over the past couple months, I've been garnering a lot of memories that have been coming into my perception of, I think, unhealed feelings around guilt and resentment. And I've always pegged myself as someone who typically played the good girl role, like not making sure anybody's feelings were hurt or upset. That made me feel safe because the thought of someone being upset or angry with me, I would be petrified that they'd abandon me or I'm working on it and getting much better. But a memory had come to mind a little while ago about Christmas that we were having one year, and my mother was sick during it. And she was chopping a bunch of vegetables, but she was not in her healthiest state. And at that time, I was trying to set a little bit of boundaries about myself and like just doing the things that I knew was for my best interest and not doing everything for everybody else. Um, and instead of me jumping in to be like, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it, like I knew she had the strength to do it. And I remember her, I think, like looking at me, being like, you're not even gonna help me. And I was like, no, mom, you've got this. And it crushed me, like went into the room, I into my bedroom, and I like sat down and I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, what did I just do? I felt really bad. I felt guilty. And so I was talking to her on the phone. So that was like a year ago, over a year ago. then I was talking to her on the phone probably like a couple months before Christmas, before December of like last year, 24. And she asked me a really interesting question. She asked if she had gotten sick in the time that we had been there in Massachusetts after her lobectomy, after she had the cancer removed from her lung. And I just was like, what? Like, you were sick at Christmas. Like, how don't you remember this? I caught myself though, because she tends to lose her memory a little bit. But again, like, is it really lost or is it a different version of her? I don't know. So it's just, yeah, Mom, you were sick at Christmas last year. Do you remember? She's like, I was? Zero recollection of it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I remember getting off the phone and telling you, I was like, my mother just asked if she'd ever been sick in that, year and a half span after she had her lobectomy. And you were like, what? And so I kind of just, that was it, like, kind of funny. We had the banter of, isn't this interesting how some people remember one scenario, other people don't. We've been in numerous conversations where we've been together a span of 2 decades. We'll be like, hey, do you remember this time? Like, nope. Or we remember it completely differently. That's the beauty of our own unique perspective, our own unique consciousness, even though we're part of a collective consciousness and tied to one, like, we get to experience things differently in moments because we are unique individuals. So then I think maybe a month passed and we were sitting on the couch one evening and I jolted up and I had this clarity come to mind of, oh my gosh, she doesn't have this memory whatsoever of being sick, of me saying no. Like, if she doesn't remember being sick, she does not remember me saying, I'm not going to help you chop these vegetables. But I do. Why do I hold this memory and she doesn't? She would think it didn't happen, but I know it happened, or it felt very real to me. And every time I think of that memory, it brings up an extreme amount of guilt. And almost like I felt really like shitty for saying, no, I'm not helping you right now. And then I thought, this is interesting in a sense where I'm remembering it perhaps for my own evolution to let go of this painful, guilt-ridden memory that is no longer serving me. Because I'm tethered to this memory, she's not. It's almost like she's free of it, or perhaps I freed her from it because I don't need her to know. She's a different version of who she is in this moment that I require her to be now. She is the mother that I need right now that doesn't have this memory. And it's like, wait a minute, okay, but at that moment that the interaction happened over a year ago, she was the mother that I required in that moment to grant me this feeling that is in me, guilt. It just was coming out. It was a revelatory process as life is really presenting us always with circumstances to see where within us we have these emotions that are stuck. And this really big emotion of guilt has been in me probably forever and is now coming to the surface. But I don't, like, in my evolution, where I'm going and how much work I'm doing on myself, I don't require her to have this memory anymore. It's mine. The memory is just with me. The visceral feeling is just with me. I heard Peter Crone say this, like, guilt and shame can only exist in a container where you believe you did something wrong. And I was like, oh, okay. Yes, I did. I thought I did something wrong by saying, I'm not going to help you chop these vegetables right now. But I knew in the moment, even though it made me sad and angry and like, oh, fearful and guilty, like, I knew it's what my higher self required to begin setting boundaries and to trust myself in this, like, path towards more autonomy, more sovereignty, more doing things instead of rescuing and helping others because I want to be the good girl and people pleaser. Like, it's okay if people are mad at me. It's okay if people aren't viewing me in the light that I want them to. That's a form of manipulation and control. So when that thought, that clarity came to me on the couch one night. I just shouted, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't require her to be this. She isn't even, she literally doesn't even have the memory.
Exactly. And that's like something that we talk about all the time, that like we're all creating our own reality. We each have our own world. And I think it's so cool to listen to you tell this story and see, like, at the time that this experience supposedly happened, like you have this memory of this thing that was exactly what you needed to happen for your evolution, because it was an expression of your consciousness. So like as you did that, as you said, as you like started practicing setting those boundaries, there was guilt. So the reality that you created contained that guilt. So the reaction and like the version of your mother that exists in that experience was a reflection of your guilt. It wasn't like her. It was the version of her that you needed to see your internal state expressed back to you and reflected to you for something to grow through. And now as you've evolved over time, we'll say, it's so hard to like language these things and kind of understand exactly what's going on, and I don't know exactly what's going on, but like now looking back at that memory that you hold in your mind is not a part of her reality, because in her reality and in her world, that wasn't something she needed to learn through and evolve through. And then like you're saying, so it's like there's infinite timelines and parallel realities and parallel universes. The one that you experience now and like the mother that's in it is most likely not the same mother that was in your reality at this other time, which is a wild concept to like really start to get comfortable with and understand. It can be really, really hard to grasp. And I feel like the more I experience things like this, where it kind of like becomes tangibly real to me, that we're all experiencing a completely different reality, even when we're in the same place, it's starting to become more and more clear to me that I can almost like allow that to happen and be a little bit more comfortable with it. Like it's probably okay for you now to just allow the fact, like you don't need to argue with her and convince her that she was sick then, because it's okay. It's like that doesn't change anything in your reality. You can just kind of like learn through the experience and grow through it. But it's like there's so many times where I know in my life I'll be talking to someone and like you said, like don't you remember like this experience? And they're like I remember that, but it was nothing like how you're describing it. And you'll almost like, I know I used to like want to argue and be like, no, like you're so dumb, like you don't remember anything. You have to see it how I remember it. And now I can kind of recognize, well, how would they remember something the same way I remember it? Because it's only my memory. It's not a tangibly like real true thing. And I think that is just that in and of itself is such a fascinating concept.
Because they're real, they're not true. What is true
Yes.
is always true. So there's a big distinction there. It's real, like we feel
glad
it,
you said that.
and it's real. But like the truth, truth is subjective. It's true. What's true to me is not true to you. What's true? I mean, what really is true? Like I've referenced this many times, but that's from the Guides channel by Paul Selig. What is true is always true, and that's like who we are as like a soul derived from spirit, but that's unchangeable. I think one of the biggest things that I was able to do, and I think that this is really powerful, because I want to make sure, and I don't want to diminish anyone's past, whether it be good, bad, anything in between, because I've been through a lot of things in my past that I still am uncovering and understanding what that meant and how it has made imprints in my mind, or at least my mind processed it certain ways so that it's granting me a better understanding of how to release some of the limitations or what needs to be reprocessed in a certain way. I can't change what happened with my mother. right? That even though she doesn't remember, it doesn't matter. Like I can't necessarily change the memory, but I can change my perception of it.
Yes.
And what I've been able to do, which is kind of like nuts, I said within this memory after I said, no, mom, like I'm not gonna help you count the vegetables. I didn't say those exact words. I can't even remember like exactly what I said. And I remember saying no, and then I remember like walking away and going into my bedroom and like sitting in a chair. The memory is now different from me, where I remember it once I had this realization and I was able to cultivate like, oh, this feeling of guilt, and then like release that. As soon as I said no to her, like replaying this memory, she just nods her head and I give her a hug.
Mm.
And that's really powerful. That's I don't know. It's again, how do you even put into word? Like now I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, did that happen? Did I actually not go sit in the chair? Did she nod her head as like it's okay, and then I hugged her? It's kind of a moot point. Because that's what's making me feel better. It's almost revealing, like, oh, okay, wait a minute. I'm not bad. I'm not a horrible child. I didn't like, I was empowering her. I was empowering myself. Like, who's to say that that's wrong?
Yeah,
like, I don't, I
hey,
literally don't know. It's just, it's interesting.
That's so powerful, and it's
right. So that's why
yeah.
I can't change what happened. I now have a different perspective, and that different perspective has granted me like a new layer to this memory that I either didn't have access for or didn't know that it happened, or that version of me cut it off to be like, no, you sat in the corner and you felt like shit, and you keep doing that. And now, because I'm allowing more light, more of my shadow to be seen by that light, perhaps I'm granted with all of the different scenarios and timelines that happened, and I was gifted with being able to see this additional piece that really like warms my heart and just connects me even more to that memory and my mother, and it sitting like in a really good, positive, uplifting, empowering way.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And we've had episodes in the past where we talked about time. And I'm convinced that the way time works is that we have like the present moment, and based on the choices that we make in the present moment, our past and future are changed. And that I think, and that's what I like, as you're describing this and saying this, it's like, as you've changed, as you've, as you've let go of a lot of the emotion that it was attached to that memory, you've allowed it to be whatever it needs to be to fit the version of you that you have become. So the past that sort of like makes sense for who you are is sort of this, we'll call it like the new story, where you hug her and everything's fine, and it's not this like traumatic experience. And I think the only thing that stops that or blocks that from happening in our life is when we are too emotionally invested or attached to those memories. And we so often want to like hold on to our memories and not allow them to change and not allow them to be anything other than they are. And what that does is affects who we are now and who we're choosing to be. I had like written down, I was going through a journal earlier, and I had this quote that I had written down where I said, we remember the world more often than we experience it. And I think just the word remember in and of itself is fascinating, because like we think of it as like, oh, it's just like I remember this thing that happened. But to remember is to bring the different pieces back together, to like bring the members together. And it's like becoming whole again. As we like truly remember something, we're becoming whole again, and we're integrating those different things. So this is like an example, like your story is perfect, because it's an example of you integrating this moment into the version of yourself who you've become. And that's allowing it to be different and allowing you to be different and to be freed from your kind of previous perception of it. Because it's like, when you look at something from different angles, it's different. And we only remember, and we can only be conscious of and notice such a small percentage of the things that are happening in any moment. So any memory that we have anyway, if it's real, and I want to kind of come back to that a little bit, but like, even if our memories really did happen, what we actually remember about that experience, like let's say if that experience really happened, what we remember about it is extremely limited. There's so many things that happen that we don't remember. And like that's why like I use the example all the time, but like you'll have like police interviewing people about a crime that happened, and people will be like absolutely sure about the thing that they saw, but like one of the it's a guy in a red shirt got out of a white truck, and then the next person's like, no, it was a guy in a blue shirt on a bicycle, and he had a beard, and this guy like, no, he had a mustache, and like everybody just completely remembers their own reality and exactly what they needed to experience in that moment for their own personal evolution. And when you kind of put it all together, there'll be like a location that's true for, or not true, is real for everybody, but the way that they're relating to the things that happened are completely different. It's like everybody, we walk by people on the street and they're just in a completely different world. And we don't even notice each other, or we don't notice the same things and what we remember. So now to look back at something and be convinced that I know exactly what happened is like really biased, really limited, and most likely like not even really what happened. If you ask someone else that was there, they'd have a completely different memory of it. So if I attach myself to that, then I'm going to keep remembering that aspect of myself. So that's especially when it's something traumatic or something that we judge ourselves for, something that we're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I'm terrible. I'm worthless. I'm so stupid. I did this thing 3 years ago, and we just keep recreating that. So then in every moment, we're choosing to recreate that version of ourselves and not allowing ourselves to be liberated from it. And it's just it's really, really interesting to start playing around with how malleable memories are. Like the world in and of itself is an idea that we hold in our mind. And everything is always changing. Everything is in flux. And it's this concept that we have of a permanent world that the ego like tricks us into believing in. So then from moment to moment, everything changes, but we keep making choices based on this idea we have of what the world is based on our memories. So we keep recreating. And that's what I said, like we remember the world more than we experience it, because in each moment, every moment's a blank canvas, and we're choosing to recreate our memories and keep being the person that we remember ourselves to be, rather than like our true authentic self.
What do you think the point of memories are?
You kind of hinted at it before, where it's like this idea of like things will keep coming up until we learn through it. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think that there's a part of it to have some form of continuity in our life, and have like to have a linear progression of our life so that it helps us to relate to other people and to relate to the world. Because if every moment we were truly like, I don't remember anything, we wouldn't be able, I don't believe we would be able to have the same like growth. Sure. And we wouldn't evolve in the same way, because we'd have to keep relearning how to like tie our shoes and how to get dressed and how to eat, and like we would just be like a perpetual baby. And we wouldn't have this sort of like this idea of where we've come from and where we're going. And I think, which is essentially an illusion. It's like an idea that we have in our mind. Like you said perfectly before, it's real, but it's not true. It's just our concept of what our life is. And that allows us to sort of play this character and to be involved in the game. But I think about this all the time, and I know I've said it to you, like, if we think of this life as like a simulation, and what if like this moment is the first time I've ever been Dan? And what if everything that I have in my mind as like memories of my life is just like a pre-loaded program of the character that I'm being today. And it's like maybe today, I woke up today as Dan. It was my first time in this game, or first time as Dan in this game, and I maybe wake up every day as a new person with a completely new set of memories, and I have no idea. And we have this idea that is literally nothing more than an idea of the last 39 years. And it's like I have this idea of like I see you and say, oh, that's Elise. I know who she is because we've been dating for 20 years and we live together and we have this dog and this podcast. But that's what if it's the same as you turn on a video game and you have a backstory. And it's like, okay, this is like I'm Mario, an Italian plumber, and I go into the pipes to find coins and mushrooms. And like we know what the character is.
Great job.
Yeah, weird game when you really think about it. But there's like if this is just essentially a video game, or I'm just coming here to learn lessons, then it makes sense that I wouldn't have to do the part where I was a baby. I can just come in and be like, oh, I remember my life. And that's just as useful as having lived the last 39 years. If I have the memories and the ideas and the programs, then I can like be in the game right now. But the huge question is if those memories aren't real, if they're just ideas, if they're just the programming I was given, how often do I use those memories to tell myself who I am and how to act in the moment and what choices to make?
It's a beautiful question for contemplation. And I think the example that I gave is exactly a good way to understand that memory. I had this download too, like when like memories has been on our mind for maybe the past, 3-4 months or so. Memory as a creation tool, but it's also a recreation tool when you're saying like we're recreating the past versions of ourselves, i.e. I was living within this guilt. Now I give that one memory, but I can give you dozens more. And I feel like once I started recognizing the pattern of guilt, I was able to see all of these memories, like whether I was in meditation or not, like sometimes memories would just pop into my mind of very reactionary states I had to coworkers or friends or like other family members. And it was just like dagger, oh. And it's like, you push these memories away or these feelings down, like, no. Like we distract ourselves. We go and we eat something or we buy something or we put on the TV or social media. And it's like, these are beautifully trying to show us what we're living in, what subconscious belief we're living in that's really, I don't think, serving any of us any longer. And we get the opportunity, I believe, truly to say, is this who I am? Like it was just an experience. And those memories, they're really imprints.
Yeah.
And because our mind is so unbelievably complex and has gotten even more complex as our consciousness raises and more layers are added to it and there is continuity and relativity through the world, I think like the memory must be there's so many different things that you could do to the memory, but like I think what has to happen is like you must tell your mind that it's not true what happened. It's just real. And we do have the power to reframe it. I'm reading the book from John Connolly, Life-Changing Conversations, and he uses a great example. He's like a therapist in a therapy session with someone, and he takes a pillow off of the couch and he slams his hand into the pillow and it leaves an imprint. And he uses the pillow as saying, like, this is your mind. Your mind now has this imprint, but because it's so complex, even though my hand, saying his hand isn't hitting the pillow, your mind believes it is until you can smooth it over. And he uses his hand and smooths it over, and there's no more impression. impression, memory, imprint, they're kind of interchangeable. I mean, I haven't really contemplated the verbiage and wordage and definition of each one, but like if you think of it, the reality transfer gentleman, I can never pronounce his name, saying that every single like nano of a second is a slide. Like a memory is a slide.
Yeah.
And it's imprinted then within our psyche to, I truly believe, to help us. Because like I said, if they're really painful, things, I mean, people had some horrific things done to them. And it's like brought me to like tears listening to people on podcasts, watching interviews, documentaries. But usually when we're watching it, it's some sort of facilitator, some sort of therapy session, some sort of coaching session, some sort of integration session where they're granted and gifted with a new way to look at it. Everything can be done that way if you're willing to. We tend to like to stay in the victim and be victims of our past experiences. And I get it because I've done that. I know, so I don't think I know one person who doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Because it's we're addicted to those emotions that we're used to. But it's really disempowering. And it's so draining to put our energy into that as opposed to truly creating the life that we are deserving of. That's our inheritance, full of joy and laughter and excitement and curiosity and things like that. So I don't really know where I was going with that, but.
Well, I think like as you're saying that, like I think of like with myself, I think very often looking back on my life, I've almost like wanted credit for how hard things were or how like I wanted validation. So it's when you get a benefit from that, when like the ego, no matter how shitty it is, when your ego can feel self-righteous in how hard it was and how much of a struggle there was in nobody had to work as hard as I did. You don't know what it was like kind of thing. And you can get comfort and like even like a little like dopamine hit or like a little bit of like adrenaline from like, well, no one knows how hard I had to work. Like, no wonder I don't have all these nice things. It's been harder for me. And we can cling to that. But you can't cling to that and like grow and have success at the same time. Because it's either one or the other. Like you're either the victim or the victor, and you say it all the time. Like you're either everybody. Like I'm gonna say should, but like everybody should be feeling sorry for me. My life is really hard, or you're doing awesome and you're having tons of success, and no one needs to feel sorry for you because life is great. But you can't be both of those things. So like in my life, I feel like I've sabotaged myself in a lot of places because I wasn't willing to release the part of myself that was benefiting from the struggle. And this is a really interesting view if you can look at that as well. Did you really struggle?
So I don't.
Yeah, go on.
That's what I was feeling. I journaled about this. Am I ready to let go of the guilt? Because it was a part of me.
Yeah.
And not that I let that part go, I integrated it.
Probably a better way to put it. Yeah.
Yes, like we think that we're losing all these parts and pieces, and some perhaps are disintegrating, but like I feel like I truly understand the integration part of it, where it's like, yes, this is it. And I think for most of my life, I wasn't ready to let go of the guilt because at such a young age that was imprinted in my mind. And then it just from there, the ego took off and it felt really good, even though it felt shitty to feel guilty.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's like, you can't really explain, you can't like justify it and logically explain it. But I think that anybody listening will know, like they've had those self-righteous moments where it's like they have like a friend or like a friend who always is like annoying and they don't want to talk to this person's always going to complain, and then there's this self-fulfilling prophecy of like then you see this person and they complain and you're not willing to stop seeing them that way because a part of you gets to be like, well, I would never do that, I would never complain that much, I'm great, even though like you sit there and have lunch for an hour and it's miserable because like I don't want to listen to this person. But you'd rather hold on to the part that is saying, well, I would never do that, than to like connect with this person in a whole new way and talk about something different and just see them for all the aspects of themselves that aren't complaining. Because nobody, we all say like, oh, this person complains all the time, but like no one really complains all the time. They just complain when it's convenient for my perception of them to be that. So when I can change my perception of them and like lean into the other aspects and be curious about, well, how do you feel like, what if there's something that you're not going to complain about and you can find it? Then they don't complain all the time, and I would have a more enjoyable time with them, but I'd have to give up and I kind of said integrate, but I'd have to give up the value in having them be that way, or give up the value I get, or like the benefit that I get from feeling sorry for myself, but integrate that part of myself. Like, yeah, well, part of me struggled and worked really hard, and that's great. I can integrate that into like my character without needing to sabotage things in the future. And I think that kind of works across all aspects. But it's really interesting when you start to recognize that these memories are somewhat malleable and that we don't have to be attached to exactly how we used to think it happened. And we can see it in a new way. And along the same lines, like we don't have to be attached to who we used to think we were or who we think we used to be. And we can allow ourselves to choose in each moment exactly who we want to be and how we want to show up without trying to be consistent to an ideal we have of an illusion of an experience.
Yeah, because when we're able to change that within ourselves, I think that's all that matters. I feel I came to that realization where such a big part of me was afraid of what other people thought of me. And there is still an underlying fear there that I welcome more frequently. But when I begin to remember things differently, people will say like, oh, but you've changed in that aspect, or you've changed here. And it's like, yes, I want to. Like I welcome that into my life. And I'm curious very often when I get these memories, good, bad, and everything in between, because it's kind of like you're saying, remembering. Like if you RE and then put a dash, remembering, like remembering the parts of you. Like a part of me was there in that time. Like I don't know, would you say it was a piece of my consciousness? Was it a piece of my some part was there? And bringing it back into me, like into the whole of my being, enables it to like, again, like either show me something differently, i.e. a new perspective and lens that I'm looking through, or completely dissolve it. Like I remember having memories like years ago that I don't remember now. And it's like, okay, it's like, doesn't mean it. My energy is not there. And my energy is better suited in other places. You know, we are energy. So yeah, maybe it was just a piece of my energy that was there, but can you even remove energy from consciousness? No, right?
Not the way I see it, not the way I perceive it. It is. I think so much of this stuff is it's difficult to put words to it.
It's so difficult, and like I said at the beginning, like we're not experts in this. We're trying, but that's the beauty of it. I'm not trying to be an expert. I'm just enjoying the conversation, and so much of the conversations that you and I have had about this, and then bringing it up with other people, because then light bulbs, you see their wheels in their head turning and stuff. It's like, oh. It's granting us all a new perspective on how to look at life. When we're able to reframe the way we look at life, we're able to reframe kind of everything.
Yeah.
It's malleable, just like these memories. Like I think I was under the impression, or perhaps that part of me required me to think that like the authority figures in my life when I was younger told me that life was this way. It's like, is that even true? It's a good question. I'm now old enough, I've been old enough for decades to question that. I just never did, or I never thought that I had an opportunity to or could. And it's like, wait, this is the beauty of being able to ask questions. I said this quote to you last night when we were walking. Dr. John DeMartini said, everything is about questions. It's all about the questions you ask, because questions enable unconscious information to become conscious. Because everything exists, right? Every single infinite possibility exists here in the now. We have access to everything. We just forget it or believe we can't for some reason, put it dormant, and then a question's brought to your attention, brought to my attention, and it's like, oh shit, wait a minute. Let me think about that. And it's such a beautiful thing to contemplate. And it's like, that's the power that we have. And I don't use that word lightly. I'm also still tapping into what that power truly means to me. And power can be, again, subjective to every person and what the meaning is. I'm not talking about powerful, like you've got very big muscles, like you're really powerful, you can lift heavy shit. I mean, I've got good muscles and can lift stuff. And I'm talking powerful in the energetic sense of transmutation, because again, that's everything is energy underlying.
Yeah, it's power versus force.
Yes, Dr. David Hawkins. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I'm not trying to like raise my voice louder when I'm in an argument with someone to be more powerful. No. If anything, I'm trying to stay calm, cool, and collected. Transmute whatever is going on internally with me to have that power that I know that I have the power to discern and to choose this. And when I say I'm using the capital I, the capital S self. I'm not talking about the ego. The ego always thinks it's powerful and in control and has exactly all the answers because it has created this reality. It has created our memories in that way. But once we understand, oh no, wait a minute. The ego is not the powerful one. It's just trying to survive, which is why it keeps, perpetuating our reality the way it is. The power lies within like that capital I, and the ego jumps on board. It does. It's like we must enlist the small self, the ego's like help in us transcending these, energies and everything. The guides also say that. I didn't make that up. We've been talking a little bit about negative memories. So I do want to just kind of maybe wrap up with a positive thing. Is within the John Connolly book that I'm reading now too. He's just, God, I can't wait for you to read it.
I know, I need to.
It's genius.
I bought it for myself. He read it, he stole it.
It's genius the way that he's able to reframe people's mind, and it's fascinating to me, and something that I'm realizing it's just something I want to keep. I'm literally reading it for a second time. When someone has gone through, regardless of the severity of a trauma, like trauma is a big word that's thrown around, like anything from micro traumas to macro traumas, whether you were like emotionally abandoned or yelled at as a child or whatever, to like sexually raped and molested. I mean, they're horrific. He's saying there's still impressions. These impressions are left. It's just like you keep feeding those impressions when you're remembering exactly what's going on. Because like I was saying, it's like that visual, he's saying like your mind is as comprehensive and complex as it is. It's thinking it's still happening, even though it's not. Like, where is it in the past? You're linguistically tied to it. You're explaining it through words. Abracadabra means, in Hebrew translation, probably going to butcher the actual translation, but as I speak, so I create. And so John Connolly's interpretation of therapy is a little bit different than most therapists, and he's the first one to tell you that. But he doesn't believe that bringing people through that visceral, awful, like rape scene, if they were, that is like beneficial. Like they've already lived it, they've already felt it. Like that's in there. What he does is he sits them and puts them through, not every single person, some of them, a meditation where he asks them to close their eyes and remember a certain scene somewhere like in nature, somewhere, and people will think the mountains or the beach or like their backyard. And what he's doing, he's asking them to describe the scene more and more, like what it feels like, what they're looking at, if there are tastes, if there are sounds, because he's bringing that person back into that quote unquote memory or that place where they have been. A part of them is there, right?
Mhm.
That part,
Yeah.
that piece, that energetic, whatever consciousness, I can't figure it out, I don't know, there. And he describes in the book, you viscerally, like literally can watch them just relax, and they're smiling, their breathing gets easier, they're just so in the moment. And as they're describing, like, oh, this is beautiful, I am peace, like I'm loving, I'm here, like I'm feeling so free and light. And he's like, that is it, that's what we all are. That's the divinity of all of us. So we've all talked about this is our innate inheritance, to experience that inner peace, that inner freedom, and those memories that are there from the really amazing places and the fun times that we have. It's absolutely incredible. The reason why I bring this up is those are just as important as the bad ones, but the bad ones seem to keep replaying because we're addicted, I think, emotionally to that chemical response. I'm trying to figure out how to explain it as good as Joe just found it is, because it's literally chemicals. These are energies within our body that produce a certain chemical that we become addicted to. It's literally like becoming addicted to cigarettes or drugs.
Yeah.
It's a chemical reaction in our body. Do you know what it's like called? I don't know the exact, I don't know. I'm learning this because I feel like it's going to be way more beneficial to say, but we're literally addicted to these chemicals. Hormones, yeah, that produce this chemical response. But in that sense, like we almost have to wean ourselves off of it. So again, the memories are there. They're there to provide us a beautiful opportunity to learn through, to grow through, to understand that there is possibly a different perspective, a new way of viewing it, a new lens to look at it through for our highest and greatest good. And he does it. The worst things, in one of the sessions, he even like, because within his sessions, he takes notes. He was like, I was trying not to react when this woman was describing the horrific things happening to her. And he was able to completely reframe what had happened to her in one therapy session. And it's like, that's the power that we hold. And that's what he was saying. That's what he wants to provide people, as opposed to having to come back session after session. Not that I don't think that there's benefit to that, because some of these really horrific things do need a little bit of time. But those really good memories, I think, are also there to anchor us. And when I was saying, like, I was pushing away these guilt memories, I was pushing away the memories that I don't want to remember. Those are also parts of me. Like you're saying, we're remembering, we're putting all the pieces. It's almost denying myself these memories. I don't want to think about that. Wait a minute. It's like, no, how can I, all right, welcome this into my life, into more of my thought process, where my mind can perhaps recontextualize this to integrate back in me. What you resist persists. That's why it was like one memory about guilt. Oh, wait a minute, this other one. Boom, 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 boom. It was all these other ones, even though it was with different people at all different times throughout my life. It was like, okay, wait a minute. I felt this bad, but I do want to, I want to understand that, like, I don't need to feel like that anymore, because I didn't really do anything wrong. I just thought I did. Or I thought something really bad happened to me. How can I begin to look at that at, oh my gosh, wait a minute. This actually is the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me XYZ. It brought me this person. It gifted me this XYZ, whatever it may be. So I think that grounding ourselves within that moment to realize, like, this peace, this lightness that, like, his clients were explaining, like, this is it. This is at the core, because every one of them was saying, it's from my heart. I feel it in my heart. That's it. That's like the seat of our soul. It's right in there. It's in the center of our heart. That's where the infinite potential, the infinite love, the infinite wisdom, and the infinite consciousness comes from. It's all there. And the feelings that we have, our sentience, they want to be let go of. And those emotions are from the ego. It's the story that we've attached to the feelings that become rampant over and over and over again. And it's just like the memories are giving us another opportunity to look at it from a different angle.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's who we are without the impressions. It's
Oh my
it's like
God.
the clarity, like that feeling that's coming from our heart, like when we're not imprinted with other things.
Yes.
Like you mentioned before, like there's infinite potential, but we have very finite attention. And when we keep putting our attention on negative stories and on trying to repress those stories too is equally as damaging, because it's like that's all we get. That's all the consciousness, like all the bandwidth we have for our consciousness.
This is also something that I'm glad you brought up really quickly, because he makes this distinction through all of his sessions as well, and this was really powerful. As I said before, like abracadabra, as I speak, so I create. That's also how powerful words are. Words are not descriptive, they're creative. So within these sessions, the clients are coming to him, this happened, and they're speaking in the present tense. So he right there knows that the mind and body, when they're that connected, thinks that the memory is still happening. Yeah. It's not. It needs to really be compartmentalized. And so he reframes every single sentence when someone says, oh, it's this way. It was that way, or it happened that way, or it was, and he uses past tense. And he does it in such a powerful way to penetrate that barrier of the subconscious mind to be like, oh, wait a minute. You're right. I'm not being mugged right now, or I'm not being slapped, or I'm not being talked down to. Okay. It's like you really do really have to place that energy and attention on the words that you're specifically using to see if you're recreating that memory, bringing it from the past into the present moment. Because as soon as you do that, then you're also creating your future, and it's this cycle loop.
Yeah. That's just, on one of our recent episodes, I said the Joe Dispenza quote that a memory without the emotion is wisdom. And like that's what it is. Like once you stop being like emotionally tied to this, and like exactly like you said, bringing that into the present moment and recreating it in every moment, then we have the wisdom to learn from it. And that's really like, it's like literally like the story that you shared earlier. Like once you had the wisdom to allow yourself to learn from the experience of your memory, the memory actually began to change, because it became a memory that was in alignment with who you had become. And it's like that's the potential for all of these things. Like you asked before, why do I think we have memories? Like that's exactly why I think it's so we can become wise. But we can't be focused on the emotion of it if we're gonna garner the wisdom and actually be transformed by it.